Story 1. I was working in a college town that had a really amazing, diverse food scene. One day during lunch, I walked over to my favorite Ethiopian restaurant. It was a super relaxed environment inside. They were kind of nestled into a shopping plaza, had dim lighting, and had mismatching dining room tables and chairs that kind of made you feel like you were at a cool aunt's house. You just knew you were going to have the best meal of your life based on all of that. When you first walk in, there is a beverage cooler directly to the right of you, and a counter with a cash register on the kitchen side and menus on the patron side. Then the random tables and chairs were kind of haphazardly scattered about. The ladies who worked there knew me and my typical order, so after paying, I hung out fiddling with my phone on the patron side of the counter, adding this crucial detail, only because it comes in later. But at the time this other patron, who is white, let's call her difficult girl, enters, I am the only other non-person of color in the establishment, a pale, pasty ginger. So the difficult girl walks in and kind of starts hovering by the beverage cooler looking around. This is more of one of those places you walk in, order at the counter, and seat yourself. If there's no one at the counter, then it would make sense to wait around up front or seat yourself and wait. The main waitress had just gone back to the kitchen to get my food, so I was awkwardly standing in front of the menus and kind of just assumed she knew the flow of things here. In the difficult girl's defense, I was wearing all black clothes, kind of the typical wardrobe for a waitress. I finally acknowledged her after she started sighing and tapping her foot, and asked if I was blocking her way to the menus. She responded with a very catty, "It took you long enough. You're just standing there on your phone ignoring a paying customer. Do you not want my business?" I was totally caught off guard and didn't say a word, just slid over a menu to her. I guess I could understand her being confused, but again, this was by no means a fancy place. Right after she said that, the waitress walked out from the kitchen with my food in a bag and told me to have a nice day. The looks on her face switched from embarrassment to confusion to annoyance, until she finally looked at me and responded with, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. You're not black. Why would someone like you work here? That's what we get for coming to a place like this, right?" And then she laughed in that way that white people do sometimes when they're trying to get other white people to agree with them on something sort of racist. It made me uncomfortable and didn't make sense anyway. I just said, "I don't know what you mean," and walked out to my car. I ended up asking the main waitress about the girl the next week. Apparently, she sent her food back twice, saying that it was too spicy, and ended up demanding a comped meal. Needless to say, I never saw that difficult girl again. Story 2. I worked at PetSmart during most of my undergraduate degree. We were in a strip mall type area, as most are, which ended with our store pretty much right in a massive Walmart parking lot. This was great when we needed supplies like Sharpies for writing codes on the fish bags or something like that. It wasn't uncommon that I would run over on my break to buy an energy drink or lunch or something for the store. On this day in 2012, I was being really absent-minded. It was finals week, and I was running on 2 hours of sleep for the last 5 days in a row. Completely on autopilot. Our uniform at the time was khaki pants and a light blue collared shirt with PetSmart on the back in huge red letters. We also had just gotten headsets. I went over to pick up a small whiteboard from my department and completely forgot to not only take off my work shirt, but my headset as well. I tried to stuff it in my pockets as best I could, but anyone who knows ladies' dress pants knows that was not happening. But I was already in the store by the time I realized, so I decided to rush and hope it would be okay. So, I'm crouched down digging through the cheap whiteboards on the bottom shelf, trying to find one that isn't broken, and suddenly I'm knocked on my butt. This woman grabbed my collar right above the big PetSmart logo and had pulled me over. I turned to look at her and said, "Excuse me, are you all right?" My retail brain was still on, and I also maybe thought she'd grab me to keep from falling or something. I don't know, I was pretty out of it. She starts shouting about the lack of good employees these days. She was maybe in her 60s, small-framed and loud. This is when I realized, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't work here actually." I pointed at the logo on my back. She goes off about how I'm clearly a manager, pointing at my headset. By now I'm clutching my whiteboard and trying to leave. I again apologized, said, "No, I work at the pet store across the way," and pointed at the small logo on my name tag. I think she took this to mean I worked at the pet department in the Walmart. After a couple of minutes of arguing while I backed away and managed to make it halfway to the register, she asked for my manager. I told her, his name is Steven, he works at PetSmart, if you go over there you can talk to him. I thought she got it finally because she stormed off. I paid for my things and went back across the way. It wasn't until an hour later, but she came in. She asked the cashier for the manager, while I spied from a couple aisles over. She actually tried to make a complaint about me not helping her at our sister store. My manager essentially laughed her off and told her he couldn't do anything about what I did on my breaks. She left threatening to call corporate, but I never heard anything. I can only assume she called Walmart corporate to make the complaint. Story 3. Obligatory on mobile. Sorry about any formatting issues. About a year ago, I worked selling solar panel systems. This job required me to wear khakis and a blue polo when I was meeting customers. One particular day, after meeting with a homeowner, I had to stop by my local Walmart to get more pens and a notepad for my work bag. I pretty consistently got asked if I worked there by other customers, and I would help if I knew what they were after. But I always told them that I didn't work there, and they were always kind. So this fateful day, I grabbed my pens and paper and checked out in the self-checkout section. As I was leaving, I heard someone say behind me, "And just where do you think you're going?" Now, a little about me. I try to mind my own business as much as possible, and don't like to get wrapped up in other people's drama. When I hear outbursts like that in public, I assume it's not because of me. I also try to follow the rules as much as possible. In this case, I assume it wasn't me because I paid for everything, so I continue to my car. Roughly 30 feet from my car, I hear again, "Hey you, stop." I do turn around at that one, because that's typically what you say to a thief. An employee who can only be described as a difficult customer is marching towards me, 8 different kinds of upset. She starts reaming into me about how I'm abandoning my shift, and I'm not supposed to get off for another 3 hours. I'm standing there bewildered because I genuinely have no clue what she's talking about, and I try to let her know I don't work there, but she won't let me get a word in. Eventually she says, "Forget it, you're fired." I waited about 5 seconds and told her, "I don't work here, I've never worked here." She stared at me and muttered sorry and ran back inside. I'm still not sure what happened, but that's my tale of being fired from a job I never worked at. Hope it brought you some joy. Story 4. My first post on here, so be nice to me if I do it wrong. A bit of background: my house used to be the village post office, and when I say used to be, I mean over 20 years ago. We bought the property 10 years ago, by which time it had been totally converted and no longer resembles a post office in any shape or form. The post office is now slightly further down the street, in a building that has a huge post office sign on the front, and looks nothing like my house, different size, color, everything. My front door opens straight into the kitchen, and is rarely locked. It's a small village, and I seem to run some sort of drop-in center for my kids' friends. I was sitting eating dinner this evening with my kids when the front door opened, and in walked a lady. Me, "Hey, can I help you with something?" As I walked towards her, forcing her backwards through the open door. Lady: "Yes, I have a parcel here to send," as she tries to duck around the side of me to get in. "Pardon, you've got a parcel?" "Yes, it's to be delivered tomorrow." "Well, you'd be best taking it to the post office," then as I almost physically push her out of the door onto the street. "Well, obviously, that's why I'm here." At which point the light bulb in my head switches on. "I'm sorry, this isn't the post office anymore. Hasn't been for a long time. The post office is a few doors down that way." Yes, very funny. "Now, could you actually do what you're being paid for and allow me to send my parcel?" "Yes, if you go to the post office, which is just down there pointing, I'm sure they'll send your parcel for you. Now, I'm going to return to my children to finish eating my dinner." And I walked inside, closed and locked the door, while listening to her having a tantrum outside. By all accounts, she found the post office, sent her parcel, and lodged a formal complaint against me, which gave the post office staff some entertainment for the afternoon. I'm really unsure as to what she was thinking. She's not from the village, as I say. It's a small village, and she walked into what is obviously a house, with a family sitting at the table eating. When she walked in, did she think I'd hidden the post office counter behind the fridge or something? My husband keeps wandering into the kitchen, asking me for stamps or envelopes or various other post office type things. Story 5. I work at a restaurant. My shift is from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. One morning I was cleaning the tables and taking out the rubbish when this rude middle-aged woman came up to me. Excuse me, you're far too young to be working here. Why aren't you in school? In fairness, I do look younger than my age. I am blessed with a baby face. Before I could explain that I was in fact 26 years old, and I left high school the better half of a decade ago. She wouldn't let me get a word and she just kept on going and going saying, "You're throwing your life away by being a high school dropout, and you will end up stupid living on the street." My manager noticed and came over. He said, "Excuse me, but what is going on?" The lady replied, "Why are you hiring kids who are 13 or 14 years old? I'll call the cops because what you are doing is against the law." My manager was like, "Ma'am, she's in her mid-20s and has been working here for 5 years. If you're just in here to harass my employees, then I suggest you leave or I'll call the cops." I thought that would be the end of it, but no. You know what difficult customers are like? They never admit they are wrong and can't just let things go. This woman's response was, "It's obvious you'd say that because you want to cover up your own butt." That's when I lost my cool. I got up and went into the staff room area we had out the back. I got my driver's license and my ID that had my date of birth. I went back out into the dining area and put my driver's license right up in her face and said, "Don't you dare assume how old I am. You're right, people should go to high school and everyone needs an education, but I already graduated high school 8 years ago." She was shocked and she just left. My manager thought it was funny, so I didn't get in trouble. Story 6. This isn't really my "I don't work here" lady experience, but I was witness to it. If you don't like long stories, I'm sorry, but not sorry enough not to do it. This morning I needed an extra jolt of caffeine and sugar, so I took myself to Starbucks. This particular location doesn't have a drive-through and is also in the same shopping plaza as a grocery store. If you happen to be unaware or need a reminder, Starbucks employees wear green aprons with the mermaid logo, except apparently they occasionally wear a different color, but mainly green, so I'm a big fan of the Starbucks app, so I'd already placed my order. When I arrived, there were about 10 or so people waiting on mobile orders, all lined up and masked and social distancing as much as we could against one wall. Another couple of people were at the register, nearer the other wall, placing or waiting for orders. It was pretty obvious that the baristas were slammed. The mobile order area already had several large bags waiting for people to come and pick them up, plus a lot of cups and small bags. They were clearly filling orders as quickly as they could and really needed some of the mobile order customers to show up and take their stuff. I'd been waiting in line, having already checked that mine wasn't one of the cups waiting for its customer, when a woman walked in and headed for the register. Let's call her difficult customer. She wasn't exactly quiet, and the store wasn't that big, so I could hear her clearly. Difficult customer wanted to place a large order. Multiple individual drinks, breakfast sandwiches, and bakery items. The employee, I'll call her register taking difficult customers' order, advised her that it would take at least 20 minutes, possibly longer, because it was a large order and they were already backed up. Well, this wasn't acceptable. Difficult customer needed her order completed in 10 minutes at a minimum, preferably less. Register explained, patiently and nicely, that even if difficult customer was the only person in the store and there were no mobile orders, such a large order would take at least 10 minutes, and that currently they had a large number of orders made prior to difficult customer that they needed to complete first, so it would necessarily take longer than 10 minutes to make her order. If difficult customer was in such a rush, she should consider calling the order in ahead of time or using the mobile app. Nope, that was still not acceptable. Difficult customer wanted to talk to the manager. Lo and behold, the manager was one of the baristas frantically making drinks right behind register and told difficult customer that if she placed and paid for her order right then, she could come back in half an hour and it would be ready. Difficult customer huffed and puffed, but was unable to blow any houses down. The manager gestured to the line of mobile order customers and said, "See them? They all use the app. They've already ordered and paid, and their orders will be made before yours." Keep in mind the entire line of customers waiting for mobile orders had been watching this entertainment, and as names were called, the line waxed and waned. And the woman in line behind me was wearing a maroon apron with the name of the grocery store in the same plaza in big white letters on the front. You see where this is going, don't you? Difficult customer looked over at the line, saw the woman behind me, and demanded that she get behind the counter and do her job. The grocery store employee looked at difficult customer, looked down at her own apron maroon, remember, with big white letters with the name of the grocery store emblazoned across the front, looked back at difficult customer, and said the magic words, "I don't work here, ma'am." So close to Reddit perfection, grocery store employees. So close. Naturally, the unwilling customer audience erupted into laughter. Difficult customer turned red under her mask, threw her hands in the air, I have legit never seen someone do that before, and exclaimed, "I can't take this anymore." And she left. I'd love to tell you that everyone spontaneously burst into applause, but they called my name just then, and I got my precious caffeine and sugar and went back home to attempt to do some actual work.